Good afternoon and welcome to the Glendale Water and Power Commission. Today is May 5th, 2014. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, and before I proceed with roll call, Commissioner Camargo and Commissioner Hale will not be attending today's meeting.
Great.
Commissioner Chan?
Present.
President Yao?
Present.
Commissioner Adjournment?
Present.
Next.
2, consent items. A, approval of the April 7th, 2014 meeting minutes.
Since two of the commissioners who are here who weren't there last month, I'm going to suggest we postpone the approval for these meeting minutes into next meeting.
3, GWP Commission staff comments.
Any comments from staff? No? Any comments from commissioners?
No.
Great. All right, next item, please.
4, announcements. A, APPA recognition.
Zone.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, it gives me great pleasure to ask Mr. Ramon Aboeg to come up and talk to you about 2 of the 3 awards that we've recently won in GWP that we're very proud of. One on the electric side of the business, one on our water side of the business, and one on our customer service and business assistance side of the business. So a little bit of everything. So Ramon's going to start it off with our reliability.
Yeah, I'm very proud to present the RP3 award that we received this year. We are now a Diamond RP3 provider. If you recall back in 2012, when we presented, we got the Platinum. I said that our last stop is to get a Diamond award, and we achieved that. Just to remind the audience, what is the RP3? RP3 is sponsored by the APPA, American Public Power Association, and they recognize utilities that provide reliable service to their customers. But that's not the only area of concentration, and I will address that in a minute. But what made this happen is really the commitment by our staff, by our employees, to the safety and reliability of the electric system. I'm really, really proud, and some of them are in the audience. I'd like to acknowledge them. They're really proud of this accomplishment. So the why do we do the RP3 process? It's not mandatory, but this actually is a good program for us. It helps us check our progress on the 4 areas that I will talk about. It helps us benchmark ourselves with others and also benchmark ourselves with the progress that we make with the programs that we have. The main idea is to continue providing reliable electric service. And it also shows our commitment to our employees, the community, our stakeholders such as yourselves, that we are looking after what's best for the community. And the 4 criteria are system improvement, reliability, workforce development, and safety. Last time we came up here, I went through all the different processes, but nothing has changed from the last time, but these are the 4 categories. And we got Diamond, but we did not get 100% like I had hoped for, because certain things we can't meet. We can, but it takes some investment. For example, under safety, APPA would rather, or the committee would rather have a defibrillator in all the vehicles. We don't do that. We only have defibs at the supervisor's trucks, and their argument is what happens if the supervisors leave the site. Mr. Zarn wants us to look at that so we can get this 100 points. So we are looking at putting defib in all the vehicles. And the other portion that we got dock points on is the assessment of our cybersecurity. We are doing assessment, but we are not formally doing it, documenting it. So that's something that our IS department is already reviewing and making sure that we get this extra point. So how did we do? Out of 100 points, we received 98.5 points to qualify us for the Diamond Service Award, which is the highest recognition we can get under this program. If you recall, this is the 3rd time that we applied. The first 2 times we got Platinum, and for this 3rd time we finally made the Diamond recognition. So again, this is not feasible without the commitment to safety, reliability by our staff. And I'm proud to say that all the staff, everyone that's been that works here that I work with, they have shown ownership. They have taken accountability for the reliability and safety of our system. Again, thank you for your support, Mr. Stern's support, and the city management that got us to here. So, any questions?
No questions from me, but congratulations. Thank you so much for doing the good work. I have utility experience. I've worked in the power system many years, and I understand what it takes to achieve this kind of recognition. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
I got a question, actually, or two. Is this a statewide or a national program? And then what percentage of utilities that apply actually reach diamond status or platinum status?
It's a national program. There's about 2,200 member utilities in the APPA. I believe this year there's only like 60 or so members that received the diamond out of about 195 that were recognized with platinum and gold.
Okay.
So I would consider we're one of the elites.
Top 3%. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to offer my congratulations to Mr. Bragg and his team as well, because I remember the first time we actually received something, and Mr. Bragg came up and said, we have one person working on it, So of all the staff, we have one person, and it was a great accomplishment that you were able to receive a platinum award. And I think I still have that initial certificate because we had copies made, and I had one. But so congratulations on this great milestone. I think it's a great accomplishment to reach diamond level, and I think it's a good effort that you're trying to get 100%, but I think perfection is still a good goal to achieve, but as long as we maintain diamond, I think it's still good.
Yeah, so this is the recognition that we have when we also got published in the APPA as
That's
one of the
great.
utilities. So.
One follow-up question on the defibrillator. How many vehicles do we have total that needs it still?
We probably have about 40 or so vehicles.
40 or so?
Yeah, that
Okay.
we use constantly, including the ones that are in
they
the
don't.
garage.
Those don't have the
No,
defibrillators right now.
Yeah, we consciously made a decision a while back that as long as we have a crew leader, and although we made sure that they're on site, the argument, there's an emergency, that vehicle could leave the site. So
And how much is it about per unit?
I forget. I'm sorry. I just 200, 2,000. I was going to say 1,500, but that's all. But
On Amazon?
But the concern too that we have is that
It's a safety issue.
It's
I
a safety
completely
issue,
agree.
and the
Yeah.
training that everyone that has one is personally responsible to make sure that is
Right.
working at all times.
Right, yeah, I think it's important, so it's worth it. Okay, thank you so much.
Great,
Thank you.
congratulations again.
4B, CMUA Awards.
So Mr. Boyd continues.
All right, Mr. Bragg.
On a row.
Right. One of the other awards that we received, we're sharing it, it's pretty heavy.
Well,
CMUA, California Municipal Utilities Association, recognized the project that we're doing with Chrome 6, the treatment Chrome 6. Yeah, and if you recall, in 2009, we started this project as a demonstration project. One of the best things about this project is this is good evidence about collaboration with the state, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and with the research community in developing a solution that benefits the whole water community, not just Glendale. So the result of this study, as you know, was used by CDPH, California Department of Public Health, to establish the MCL, the maximum contamination level for chromium-6. The result of this study identifies the technical feasibility of treating chromium-6 and also identify the costs associated with it. And just like the electric, we have water staff here that I'd like to recognize, including CDM, who is our contractor, that really work hard in making sure that we meet our commitment to the state and to the community, improving that chromium-6 can be treated out of water. So we detailed the reports. If you recall, back in February, we released a report for CDPH to use for directing or defining what the MCL is. So as a result, CMUA recognized this as one of the projects that proved to be beneficial not only to the city, but to the rest of the water community. And as you know, we're continuing to fine-tune what we discovered through technology and making sure that the plant is more efficient. So we're not finished yet. So with that, again, I want to thank our water staff
Can you bring
contractor.
up all your staff and introduce each person and what they do for GWP? Both
What,
the
electric and water?
Yeah.
electric and water, yes, because
Let's
they're
start
here.
with the water.
Want
This
made
is
name and a
Charles
face.
Cron. He is the operations supervisor for CDM. He's in charge of our treatment plant. Dave Massey is our water superintendent responsible for supply. And Ken Hong is our water supervisor, again, responsible for supply as well. So these are the gentlemen that work day in, day out, making sure that we deliver safe water to our community.
Great.
Thank you so much for the very valuable work you do for the city.
And for the electric side, Catherine Babakanlu is our electrical engineer one, and so is Burhan. But Catherine worked on the application this year. She's the poor soul that had to respond to all my questions. And Eric Olson is our supervisor who's in charge of reviewing the work that they do.
Great.
So,
Well,
Great work,
congratulations.
guys.
Thank you so much.
all right. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll ask Ms. Hartunian to come up and talk to you about the second CMUA award in her operation.
Thank you. Members of Commission, hello. My name is Atine Hartunian. Wanted to give you a brief update about our 6th and 7th CMUA award win. Our second one this year was for our energy programs category for our SEVA Energy Consumer Engagement Program. I believe you're all familiar with our SEVA home view frames. In late 2012, Glendale Water and Power partnered with SEVA Energy to launch a program designed to increase customer awareness of water and power usage and provide tools that allows customers to take control of their consumption habits and increase customer satisfaction. With that, we started a pilot program with 72 of our customers, provided them with the SEVA HomeView frame. It's a digital photo frame that mixes in conservation and energy usage and water usage information with their personal photos, and then also gives them that instant view of their electricity in real time, and also gives customers a new and effective way of engaging with the utility itself. So now we are expanding this program to include 500 customers in the next year. So we're really excited about that, and we're definitely excited that it won a CMUA award in the energy programs category.
Do you have an award to show?
Well,
to?
it's the same exact award, but one is for water, one's for energy, but I think they're a little heavy, so we just brought one to represent the award.
That's great.
I
Congratulations.
will add it too. When you walk into our main Perkins building, to the right, you'll see an award display, and we have all of our CMUAs displayed in there, but now they're looking better and better. So.
I know, that's
Great.
beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank
I know all of the commissioners got a chance to get the SEVA frame and experience with it. I know I did. You didn't? Okay.
You can still sign up. We can include you in the second pilot.
Hey, yeah, it's just great. Thank you.
Thank
so much,
you.
yeah.
Congratulations. Any more awards, Mr. Zone?
That's it for now, but we'll bring more. Don't worry.
Great.
This is an award-winning group of folks, as you can see, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm sure you are as well. But these are well-deserved and a lot of hard work that goes into that. So we'll keep at it. We'll keep bringing them back.
And the public will get a chance to view them at the Perkins Plaza, as
Correct.
I've seen that in the past. So you have all the awards from past years too, not just the current year. Right?
Correct.
Great.
How are you choosing the 500 people?
First come, first serve.
Okay. And is that on our website, the offer?
It's already full. I think
It's
it was
already
full
full?
within about 40. We had about 48 hours. We had reached our quota, and I think Atine just
A while
said there's
back.
900 that are actually
on
on
the
the
list.
list. So this next 500 will go forward, and then we'll have another approximately 500, and then we'll keep going. But it has been very popular, very
Right.
popular.
And I'm just curious, the expense of that is that from a grant or it's?
It's actually, we rolled out the pilot through the modernization efforts and the original DOE grant. And so we're going to get to a point, because these are about, how much?
100? Was it 100?
Somewhere in there. I'm going to say it's about $80. But then there's a
$80,
usage fee for those
Okay.
as well. So
Okay.
during the pilot, we've been including that as part of our program. But at some point, if we go citywide, we may have to look at how we deal with that. 'cause
Right.
It'll add up.
Have we measured any effectiveness as far as that 72 individuals that had the SEVA frame?
We did it through a survey.
Okay.
So we went back before we expanded the program. We did a survey, and that survey was a third party that did it. Both SEVA and the city were monitoring that, but we had a third party come in and do it. And overall satisfaction was very, very high. And you can just tell it's gotten out word of mouth because we have not advertised it. One of the things was I was a little reluctant to advertise it when we didn't have it. So, when you brag about a system and then somebody says, "Can I have one?" and you say, "No, we don't have any." We've kind of kept it low key, but once we were able to get to that next phase and roll out another 500, we based it on whether or not it was something that was worth moving forward on and expanding. And the survey results were very positive. People liked them, they used them. Of course, they have dual purposes, multi-purposes. You can use them for a lot of different things, but folks were dialing into their electrical use and using a tool to help them manage their consumption of energy. So that was key.
That's the key question, to benchmark it against their previous use and see if having that actually allowed them to use energy at different times or different amounts and whatnot.
Right.
So, okay.
May I ask Commissioner
We'll get a
Chan
report,
about that?
I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe Commissioner Chan can enlighten us about that. Did you see your usage
you
go
know,
down because of this?
I
SEVA?
remember the first several weeks, we were constantly looking at the frame, and whenever we used the microwave or turn the air conditioning on, the electricity use would spike up. And now, unfortunately, after a while, then we had some issues with the frame, and so my fiance and the staff here did go back several times, trying to resolve the issue. And my understanding was, I think it's because of the position, of the meter versus the frame, and also the thickness on the walls and all. We were having problems, and that was never resolved. But I was told that's very rare. It's just because of the situation, the thickness of the wall, the location, and all. So that's why it's not really working 100%.
Good.
That's my understanding. But for a while, when it did work, yeah, we noticed.
We'll keep looking at it. The technology's got to get better, right? We'll come back and see. We'll penetrate those thick walls eventually.
Well, you don't want to increase in the frequency that goes to your house. The intensity of that RF.
I don't think it matters.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item, please.
5, reports information. A, water conservation update.
We'll ask Ms. Hartunian to come back up. She's one of our featured monthly speakers on the topic of water conservation. You may recall last meeting when she gave you an update that she was also ready to attend a broader MWD meeting to see what was going on there. So she's back to talk to you.
Okay. Hello, members of Commission President, members of Commission. My name is Atine Hartunian. I'm the Public Benefits Coordinator. Commissioner Chan, this might be a little bit redundant since both commissioners weren't here last month, so I just want to kind of review what I said, but there are some new updates too. Since my last presentation, I wanted to let you know that the water supply situation, unfortunately, in California hasn't improved. And so Governor Brown issued an executive order on April 25th to redouble state drought actions. So he's calling on all water utilities and districts throughout California to really step up their conservation efforts, educate and inform customers as much as they can to conserve. We are still currently in voluntary conservation mode and are encouraging our residents through a variety of different ways to continue to conserve. I have included some examples for you of our current outreach that we're doing. As you could see, last month we didn't have these ready yet, but we do have our Help Conserve brochures, and those are going out to each customer through their water bills. They're available at all public counters, at libraries, and they've been translated into the different languages. And it's also available on our website to download. And so far, we've distributed 50,000 of these. And as we attend community events and work with our community-based organizations and make presentations, we take these basically everywhere we go. In addition to these, customers can always find conservation information on our website. We also have links to other websites, including the state's SaveOurWater.org website that they could find information on the drought. We have also distributed over 1,000 shower timers at community events, 700 water information booklets, how to check for water leaks. We have a brochure that we're sending out to customers, again, through the bill inserts. And children's activity books, we're working with the Unified School District and public events to distribute those. So far, we have been to 8 community events to promote conservation and talk to residents about the governor's drought declaration. We will also, this last week, we attended the farmers market and the Montrose farmers market. So we're going to be there the first Thursday and first Sunday of every month. And we're having a great turnout. Customers are stopping by, picking up information, and we're talking to them about conservation. We're taking every step to inform and educate. All of our remaining landscape classes are booked for now. We're looking into receiving a grant from the Metropolitan Water District to add more classes this summer and fall. We're also reserving advertising opportunities in bus shelters, the Americana, and the Glendale Beeline at this time. We're promoting conservation through GTV6, developing a PSA, and then going to purchase ad space on local cable stations. We're in the final stages of developing table tents for our restaurants to promote conservation at restaurants. Currently, we are sending them the static clings that you see here. These are removable stickers that they can place in bathrooms, in any other facility. They're peel and they don't ruin the surface or anything. We're also going to be working with our city facilities to have these put in to city buildings as well. In the next few months, we'll be attending over 15 community events to distribute conservation information. We're also meeting with the neighboring cities of Burbank, La Crescenta, Pasadena, the Water District of California, and the Crescenta Valley Water District in order to discuss messaging, outreach events. And currently, the Crescenta Valley Water District and the Foothill Municipal Water District are promoting 3-day-a-week watering schedules for their areas. And lastly, we're developing our turf replacement program. We're in the final stages of developing that to give customers a rebate to remove their turf and replace it with California native plants. In addition to that, we've developed a garden-wise website. It is called GlendaleWaterWiseGardening.com. It'll launch in the next couple of weeks, and it actually gives customers pictures of gardens in Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena. And all of the plants are hyperlinked, so customers can click on each plant, develop a plant list, print it out with the pictures, and take it to their local nursery, and then they could purchase these plants and plant them. A lot of times through our landscape classes, customers ask to see before and after pictures of California native gardens, and so this website gives them free access to over 300 pictures of actual gardens that have been transformed to California native gardens. So that will definitely help our customers, and when they ask, how do I do this, we are giving them the steps and the tools to help them. That's our update for this month. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll bring more back in each month.
Thank you so much, Tina, for the update. I do have a question, or actually a request. Can you remind me why we're not offering rebate on artificial turf?
Our city council voted against providing rebates for artificial turf for the front yard, because it doesn't meet our landscape ordinance.
Front yard.
Front yard. We don't offer any artificial turf rebates at all. However, we do not allow artificial turf in the front yards in Glendale.
Okay, period. But you can have it in the backyard, but no rebates still.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's clear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question. I heard you said that these brochures will be included in the next bill.
They already are.
Mm-hmm. Water bill or electric bill as well?
Both. They're combined. They're bi-monthly bills. So we started in mid-April and we'll go through July.
Okay, because one of my thinking is that sometimes there are master meter buildings where the customer might not get these things if they don't have a water bill. So it's good that you're including them in electric bills. Mm-hmm. So at least those tenants can have the idea of how to save water. Sometimes I still see sprinklers broken and spewing water. I mean, so usually people can call in to have Glendale Water and Power go check, right, or at least send the notice. What do they need to do? Do they need to provide the address or just the general location?
They usually provide the address if they can't. We can't send staff out to check, but if staff is also out and they notice, since we don't have set days of watering, customers can't water after 9 a.m. Or before 6 p.m. So we will let the customer know. As we go into if we go into mandatory conservation, we will have a proper notification procedure that states to the customer that they are violating a certain mandatory conservation ordinance. But in the back of our brochure, we have our no water waste policy, and that does require customers to repair leaks within 72 hours. So if we do receive a message from a customer with an address, then we will notify that customer that they need to repair.
Yeah, no, it's good to have at least an outlet for customers to call in to maybe report. We don't have water police right now, but at least they can report any broken sprinklers or
Yes.
waste of water. That's good stuff. Thank you, Mr. Tina.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Next item, please.
5B, water rates, proposed cost of service analysis.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, as we had discussed and continued to adjust our schedule regarding discussion on the water rates, one of the questions that was posed to me by the Commission was a chance that we could bring the cost of service analysis, the required cost of service analysis, to the Commission before we got the whole process really underway. And fortunately, the meetings lined up. Although it didn't get done in the time frame we had hoped, it was a lot more work than we had originally anticipated. We are pretty much ready to move forward, so we have an opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about the cost of service analysis. It isn't the official because it hasn't been accepted by the City Council yet, but this is about as final a draft as we have, and we've had a lot of drafts, I can tell you that. But as you know, because of some errors that were made in the formulation of the original structure a few years ago when the rates were put into place, and some of the problems that we encountered as a result of that required us to go back and do a thorough review, really kind of from A to Z on everything in that cost of service analysis, and in many cases restructure, rewrite, reconfigure the entire document. So we're there, we're close, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But today I thought we'd come and just give you a brief overview of where we started and where we are today, and then hopefully, if everything goes right, next Tuesday we will start the process by asking the council to set the public hearing date, and then we'll go out to the public, start talking about it, and then come back to you and present to you our findings and our recommendations and options, and then take your recommendation to council and see what the final verdict is. So we're really just kind of embarking on that process now. So the timing did turn out actually okay. With that, the firm that we retained to help us do this was Bartles & Wells. And Doug Dove from Bartles & Wells is going to come up and give you that overview and a little bit about what he inherited when we started and what he's and his staff and my staff together, along with staff from the finance department, from the city auditor's office, from a number of different operations in the city, because we really QAQC'd this thing. We kicked the tires pretty heavily on this, and everybody who has a stake in it, looking at it from a different angle, whether it was the auditor or the finance people or engineers or customer service related functions and IS functions, to make sure that we had it all vetted out. So I think we're pretty comfortable right now. I'm pretty comfortable right now. But here we are, ready to begin the process. So I'm going to ask Doug to come up and give you that brief overview and answer any questions you might have.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the Commission. My name is Doug Dove. I'm a consultant with Bartles Wells Associates, and as Steve mentioned, we have been working with staff to go through the city's water rates and go through errors that were made by the prior consultant, and to do a completely new cost of service analysis and a rate rate recommendations. As you know, the rates were adopted in 2012, and they went through, I guess, January 2015 with phased-in rate increases. In early 2013, the city noticed that the revenues weren't coming in at quite the rate they were expecting, and there was a shortfall due to miscalculation of the rates by using the bi-monthly consumption amounts and assuming those were monthly. So they really, the prior consultant really made a mistake. And so as a result, we're getting less revenue than was projected and is needed. There was actually two mistakes. One is the bi-monthly and monthly usage, and another is that on the fire meter rates, the fire meter charges were calculated, and then the the basic potable rate for a meter was added to the fire charge, and both were charged. So there was an overcharge on fire meters and an undercharge on regular water rates. So these two kind of offset each other a little bit. There was additional revenue generated in the fire rates and not less than expected in the regular, residential rates. So it took a little while to figure this out, but we've traced it back, and we estimate that the lost revenue is about $8.8 million. And you can see, the total operating revenues, the expected revenues from the prior consultant's report were about $100 million. What was actually collected was about 91.1. And so those rates were calculated to eliminate a negative balance in the water enterprise. And so we still have a negative balance in the water enterprise at this point. So we have recalculated the rates, and our guiding principles were that we wanted to obviously comply with the requirements of Prop 218 and get back to that positive cash flow that I mentioned. The rates need to encourage conservation and support a conservation message. The fixed charges and the variable charges, roughly 30% of your revenue come from the fixed charges and 70% from the variable. We think that's a good mix, and that was confirmed by the cost of service analysis. So we're going to keep that the same. We want the rates to encourage conservation and encourage less efficient users to become more efficient. We want the rates to maintain revenue stability, and also we were tasked with creating special drought rates in case we have to go to mandatory drought cutbacks. So just briefly, the components: we have fixed charges and we have variable charges, and we also have some adjustments for the future if the Metropolitan Water District costs go up higher than what we had anticipated in the study. Then there could be an adjustment, and also if energy costs go up higher than what is anticipated, there are these water adjustments. But on the fixed charge, we have customer account costs, meters and services costs, and fire protection. And there's public and private elements of the fire protection. For variable, we have what's called the base plus maximum day costs, and then the groundwater and the this is the purchased water MWD costs as well. And so we calculated the cost of service so that we're recovering the revenues in the same proportion as the costs. And so it's a very complicated calculation. And as Stephen mentioned, there was a lot of oversight on this analysis, auditors reviewing all of our calculations, going through the model, so that we don't make the same mistake the prior consultant made.
I'm sorry, can I ask questions along the way? For the last slide, are you comparing from the existing water rate structure versus the new one on the right? Because the differences are not that significant. No,
this is going forward. This is the cost of service. So, single family, the expenses are about 44%, and then our model, which it's nothing is perfect, it's 43.8 is coming from single family.
Okay, doing expensive versus revenue.
Yeah. So this is the proposed rate structure.
Okay. So will you be showing the comparison between the current mistaken rates versus the new rates?
We have some comparisons, yeah. So as I mentioned, we wanted to keep that 30% fixed to 70% variable. That provides a lot of incentive for folks to cut back, save money.
And then, I'm sorry,
go ahead,
for
please.
the 30 to 70%, will there be any changes from the old model of 30 to 70? Are you adding additional variable or any additional fixed to the fixed component?
We've updated the costs based on the latest budget. Prior study was 2012. So there's a little bit of changes in the, because we updated the latest budget numbers.
But the component of the fixed cost will pretty much be the same?
It is the same.
Okay.
70-30.
All right. But then, no, the components within the 30% so it'll stay the same like the labor cost, for
Yes,
example?
and even the adjustable charges you see are adjustable charges that currently exist.
Okay, so you're not like switching some around
No.
and stuff?
In fact, the only thing we did on those costs was we found a water treatment charge that we thought was a bit of double dipping, so we took that out. So no, it's our fixed costs for the distribution system and the well system in that and treatment versus the variable cost that's based on water usage by the customer.
Right, so you
Components are there.
Okay,
They're the same.
Great.
So we did update the meter ratio structure that was used in generating the charges, and this we found a more accurate set of ratios that we thought was better to use. And so this resulted in a little bit lower cost for smaller meters and higher cost for larger meters. And that was based on the actual type of meter that the city uses. And prior to that, it was just a generic 2-inch meter, 3-inch meter. And then the tier structure for the residential, we like to simplify things, and we think a 4-tier structure is adequate, whereas the 2012 rate had 5 tiers. And so when you have more complicated, there's more chance of having an error made. And we just think that the 4-tier structure is better. It's easier to understand. For multifamily, we're recommending that you reduce from 3 tiers to 2 tiers. And that, again, is to simplify the structuring. We've corrected the errors from the 2012 study, and fire line charges have been recalculated and corrected. And since there were a number of customers, over 1,000 fire meters, the number of customers were overcharged. So those overcharges are going to be refunded to the fire meter customers. Also, on recycled water, you currently have a 25% discount. You offer a 25% discount for recycled water. We're reducing that to 15%. It's a very important water source for the city, and so we want to encourage its use, but we don't want to give it away.
But it's 15%. How do you come up with 15% rather than the 25% that we're currently?
Yeah, it's an incentive basically for folks to use the recycled water. We took the regular rates. We calculated the rates with recycled and potable together, and we've cut back the recycled rates 15% to encourage folks to use that resource.
Yeah, but are you doing a cost-neutral analysis so that 15% would be a cost-neutral for the utility, right? Or is that kind of analysis?
Yeah, we're using some other non-rate revenues. It's not a large amount of money in the end. That 15%, I think it's like $100,000. But we're using some other non-rate revenues to make that up. So it's not a subsidy of one customer for another.
Because I think we're trying to encourage recycled water usage. So I imagine going the other way, increasing the discount so that we encourage more customers to install recycled pipe and potentially tap into the system. But if we're reducing it, that creates a lower incentive.
Well, but the problem we run into in the water, and this is very unique, it's not the problem we have in electric, is one customer class cannot subsidize another customer class. And in electric, we have other resources that the state allows us to use. As you know, we subsidize rates for low income and seniors. That's not acceptable in water because we do not have a source. You cannot do that. Mr. Dove's given us some ideas of what other water utilities have done to try to create that, which is interest off of your portfolio or interest off of your reserves, if that's potentially could be used to provide incentive-based programs. So we have to be very, very careful. So we think that we are meeting the intent of the law by being able to have some level of subsidy, and as Doug said, using other non-rate revenue that allows us to do that. But But at the end of the day, we have to be very, very careful that one category is not subsidizing the other, no matter how beneficial it might be, unfortunately. And I agree with you. We want to encourage people to use recycled water. So that's one of the reasons Mr. Abweg and his staff have really jumped all over the recycled or the bond that's out there for grants to develop recycled projects to see if we can't help that the use of recycled water that way.
I agree there shouldn't be any cost subsidies, but I understand the whole recycled water system, but if we don't use it, we just dump it in the ocean, isn't it? So the water is going somewhere where if they don't go to
Fortunately, a lot of it is going into the LA River. That is an unfortunate situation. It comes out of the waste treatment plant and goes in there. But at the end of the day, we still, the source of the water and what the utility's paying versus what the infrastructure to maintain it, the law maybe hasn't quite caught up with the drought situation and alternative uses for water conservation and recycled water.
I think a little more thought will probably need further discussion on this discount percentage, because I don't think 15 is right. I'm not sure what the right answer is. We're going from 25 to 15. That's a potentially drastic reduction, and I'm sure it's going to impact our customers who are using recycled water now. And so to encourage future use of recycled water, I think we need to have more discussion on that percentage.
Well, to the extent it's legal.
Yeah.
If it isn't legal, there's nothing we can do about that.
So this is for all customers,
All
previous and new,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
We'll get only 15% discount.
Yes.
So,
And I think we've also, Mr. Boyd, correct me if I'm wrong, we also have surveyed other water agencies, and this is a number that's fairly consistent with what other water agencies offer. We may have been offering a little bit too much, and at the end of the day, still not getting the kind of response we had hoped for, because the cost is of developing the infrastructure. And to the extent that we can do that through other means, I don't think the cost of the water itself is the big driver on this. It's the cost of installing the infrastructure, either into your building or for us to put it in the distribution side of things. That really is what costs. So to the extent we can build some of that and provide service hookups, I think we get inside the building or you get inside irrigation systems, yeah, I think that there'd be a great deal of interest in using water, even if it was a 15% discount.
well, I'm thinking about like the previous, the customers who signed up previously. And when they signed up, they're under a certain, impression, right? They're under the impression that they're going to save a certain amount. And, I mean, they were told 25% a while back, right? And now you all of a sudden change to 15. How's that going to be received?
Like a rate increase. It's a rate increase.
Yeah,
and again, I know if we had the ability, our hands are really tied here. And we've made some adjustments. We'd like to look at different customer classes and say, based on uses, based on what you do, is there an ability for us to have lower rates in one category over the other? It's just not the case. Ms. Cadenas can correct me if I'm wrong, and I think you all know we have people watching us very closely, very, very closely on how we do this.
So when a customer signs on, isn't he or she supposed to sign a certain contract with the city? And is this 25% discount not written in the contract? Any of this promised?
It's on a rate schedule. So
like
it's
a
really
rate.
not a contract, it's on the rate. So when the rate changes, it changes.
Right. When the rate changes, yes, the amount will change. However, the amount of discount stays the same, right? No? It's
No,
not written
it's like a rate,
25%?
No.
No, it's on a rate
It's like
schedule.
a
That's
rate
the,
change, yeah. It just becomes a rate change. Just happens the rate is 25% below. I'm not even sure you'd call it a 25% discount. It's just 25% lower than potable. We're just closing that gap.
Oh, I see. So you actually stated like the amount on the rate schedule instead of like a fixed percentage
Correct.
off.
That's correct. And if it helps, the industry discounts the recycled water by 10%, and we're still going higher than that. We're still at 15%.
Okay, so how does this look as far as, impacts different customer classes? As we mentioned, the fire lines, they were being overcharged, so they're going to go down significantly. And we're also going to refund the overcharges. Single-family residential, multifamily are going to go up because they were being undercharged the most by the prior rates because of the miscalculation. Commercial, about 5.2%, and irrigation, about 3.7%. So when this is a readjustment to correct the errors that were made in the last rate. So let's look at some bill comparisons. For a typical single-family home with a 3/4-inch water meter and 1,900 cubic foot a month, here's Glendale, and it's, lower than LA Department of Water and Power and Crescentia Valley, close to Pasadena, and a little bit higher than Burbank. And I believe Burbank has a lot more wells that it uses, so its cost of water may be lower. On the multifamily, we've got, again, Glendale and Burbank are the lowest here. This is per unit, per dwelling unit. For a typical small business with a 1.5-inch meter and 6,600 cubic foot of use, Glendale is very competitive here. So we're seeing your overall charges are very reasonable. This is for a large business using a 6-inch meter and 1,632 cubic foot of use. That's a lot of use. Again, very competitive here.
And Doug, this is with the new structure. This is under the new structure.
Okay, so let's talk about the fire lines. Right here, you can see these charges are what were being charged up until a few months ago. And we have recalculated the charges based on the American Water Works Association methodology, standard methodology. And so these fire lines are basically standby meters that are only used if a building has a fire and they have to turn on the meter and use that meter. That's a separate meter. It's just a standby. So these rates are the new rates for the fire line. You can see they're much lower than these here. So there's going to be some rebates for customers who are paying this rate. And as far as drought rates, we've calculated rates to implement when and if you declare a mandatory drought cutback. If you declare that folks need to cut back 20%, well, that is going to translate into much lower sales of your water. And so we've calculated drought rates that accommodate that, recover that revenue, because your expenses really don't go down. So we've got 4 or 5 levels of drought rates based on the cutback that may or may not need to be done. But those only go into effect while the mandatory conservation drought declaration is in place. So I just mentioned how that was calculated. And I mentioned the water adjustment charges. This is if costs for pumping, for energy, or costs for purchased water are higher than what we project in the report. And there was a third element, an adjustment for treated water and the cost of treating water, but we didn't feel that needed to be included. So we're just continuing with the energy adjustment and the purchased water adjustment. So that's the summary of rate structure.
I am curious. The previous consultant made these mistakes.
Correct.
Is there anything okay,
Mr. Garcia and his staff are reviewing that very closely.
Okay. Reviewing the contract to see
what all of our options are in that
Exactly.
regard. Can't talk a lot about it, but
Okay.
he is certainly
understand.
all over it and looking at that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to ask some questions on the last 2 slides. Go backwards then. On the water adjustment chart, which could be a quick comment. So those...
Which one?
The water adjustment charges. So those are pretty much the same type of components that was already existing in the current
Yes.
structure. So nothing changed there, right?
Right.
Variation in the purchase water is a pass-through. Whatever costs we incur from MWD, we pass it on to the customer. And then, of course, the energy charge. If it costs us more to pump water, of course, we'll have that adjustment. And I think it's a quarterly adjustment. Am I right, Mr. Zun, or is it?
No, it's 2 times a year.
2 times a year, okay. Okay, so those are standard. So we go back to the next slide on the drought rates. I just want to clarify some of these, or the proposal, because the drought rate is going to be a separate rate structure than our current rate. So if we're asking customers to reduce 20% through the mandatory conservation, does that mean that all the rates going to go up by 20%?
Essentially, the drought rate proposal is a charge on the volumetric usage. So I think for the first stage of the drought, it's something like 75 cents per 100 cubic foot. So if you declare a drought and mandatory cutbacks of 20%, then that first phase would go into effect, and that additional charge would go on the consumption rate. And similarly, would be a higher charge if we go to a stage 2 or stage 3 drought. So it's just an additional charge on the volumetric rate.
What was the percentages then? Do you have a table that you can maybe come back and show us?
Yeah, we have a table in the report.
Okay, so you said it's not a straight correlation where we're asking people to conserve 20%, that we're not increasing by 20%, but what's the different structure?
Yeah, it's essentially that, except mathematically when you cut back 20%, you need to raise the rate a little bit more than 20% to make it back to whole, because you're only charging it on 80%. But you have the rates are designed to make the utility whole,
right,
with the reduced consumption.
Yeah, I understand completely. The utility needs to have enough revenue to maintain the operation. But we're pretty much telling people that the more you conserve, you're still going to pay. And that doesn't really jive with the public, I think, because that's the purpose of having a fixed and variable. The more that you can conserve on the variable costs, the utility shouldn't be as greatly impacted because you're recovering a lot of your costs through your fixed structure. So we're telling the public that we're considering these drought rates, that regardless if you conserve or not, we're still going to collect the same amount of revenue from you guys.
Because we're going to need to. But the only other option we have is to change the percentage of the fixed versus variable. And we can go 60-40, and I can tell you that'll be a huge blow to the customer. We looked at it, and I quite frankly didn't feel comfortable doing that. I felt better about drought rates that are tied just to mandatory recycling. They go away as soon as that is done. But if we need to try to hedge our bet on our costs, we could change that percentage. But I guarantee you, it is a big hit. Too big, I think. I think the drought rates is a much better way to try to stabilize your revenue during low usage periods, and that those are temporary as the drought legislation is in place, and then they go back to normal. I mean, the only other thing is for us then to just flat raise rates in order to try to catch up on revenue, and that doesn't go away. We will simply raise the rate structure. That doesn't go away after the drought's over. It just remains in place. So our thinking was, if we can tie it directly to that period and stabilize our revenue during the period, because we just don't ever want to find ourselves in the situation we're in today and having to come back with massive rate increases to try to catch up. It just isn't good business. So this is a concept. It's still a concept. It's proposed. But this I felt was better. The staff felt was better than us either changing the structure so that you had more like a 60-40 split between variable and fixed, or to simply, when you get to a point where you're hurting on revenues, is go back and just raise the rates outright. And then that just goes, that's permanent, and it continues to go on and on. So this is an option that's relatively new, but a lot of cities are adopting it, obviously in California, where you put these into effect only during periods of mandatory conservation. And then they go back to normal. They adjust back to whatever the original rate structure is at the time once the legislation's been revoked or rescinded.
Yeah, it makes sense, but my concern is when we go through a mandatory drought conservation effort, people are not going to believe it because they're not going to conserve, saying that, why conserve when I'm paying the same amount? Because they should have, and even though they have maybe some environmental consciousness trying to help the environment, but in reality, they're not paying any more than or any less than if they were not conserving. So I just want to think about the customer's mindset if we go through this.
And we'll try our best to explain that to them.
But I was just going to say that it's an education process, but if they don't conserve it, they'll actually pay much more.
Yeah.
So if they don't conserve in a mandatory drought, they'll pay much more than regular. So they're better positioned to actually conserve, while the state is in mandatory drought.
Yeah, the tiering schedule stays the same. It's actually a little bit more when you go to the higher tiers. So believe me, you'll pay a lot more if you don't conserve.
Well, only if the MWD charges us more, then you pass it through. Because that's typically the case. If we go through a mandatory drought, then MWD charges us more for water, right? That's where the pass-through is.
Well, MWD rates, if they go up during a mandatory drought, what happens is, MWD, when they declare mandatory conservation, because we buy 70% of our water from them, we have no choice but pretty much to do the same. But the adjustment charge for the cost of the water is a little bit different. So if they put a 20% mandatory in, let's say, but they don't raise their rates, then there is no adjustment on that. If they were to do that and raise it whatever percentage greater than we've plugged into the budget, then we would adjust that at some point
in addition
January
to
or July.
The
But I don't recall that happened the last time. It simply was a matter of our supply was choked down, and that required us to then put in mandatory recycling as well. But the rates that we have built in for MWD are what they are just ready to approve, and I think they're pretty solid. I don't usually see them deviate, and I don't expect that they probably would. So the chances that we would have some level of an adjustment charge for the water purchase is probably low. Energy, we know what our electric rate increases are going to be over the next 4 more years, but of course you have gas involved in there, and so if gas for some reason goes up, and that then we adjust electric, and then that gets adjusted back to the other customers, it could go up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think at this point I'm be as supportive with the drought rates, because I think that needs to be discussed more about the impact to the customer when the condition does arise.
Well, I'm sure we'll discuss it more, Mr. Yao. This is just an overview of the COSA. We'll be back to you with. We're going to go out to the public, and then have the commission has another chance to make any comments they want to make, and then we go back to the council, and so there'll be a lot more opportunity to talk about that.
But at this point, the proposal is for the drought rates to take effect doing mandatory conservation only, not voluntary.
Correct. Yes, it would not be. For instance, if we had them in place right now, they would not be enacted at this point in time.
So wouldn't the condition is still the same if people do conserve during the voluntary conservation? Then you still would be losing revenue.
Right.
Well, but we've had our voluntary conservation measure in since before we put the mandatory the last time in 06, excuse me. We've never taken it off the books. It's been in place. The council never rescinded the voluntary. So, and we've seen our people adjust to that. And today I think we used the same amount of water that we used in 06. So, of course, we have to adjust other things to make sure that we stay up with the costs. But I think overall, it's just that big hit that you take in the mandatory, because people for the most part abide. And when that drops and you find yourself short, that just then carries on and on and on. You pull down reserves, and we begin to find ourselves in a similar situation we're in today. And
when's the soonest that these drought rates can be in place?
I'm sorry?
The drought rates that we're considering right now, when's the soonest?
They would be with the next rate increase. At this time, our schedule is to have those in place September
of this year?
First? Yes, September of this year.
Okay, so if City Council declares a mandatory drought before September, we're not using these.
These are not currently on the books.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, so we have no drought rates at the current time.
No, we do not.
Right. Okay. Good. I have a question on the power line charges. So at the current time, can you explain to me what these are? Who has them? What
You mean
percentage of the customers?
the fire line?
The fire line
Yeah,
charges?
the private fire line, it says.
So we have about 1,100 customers.
1,100? Commercial businesses?
Primarily, yes.
Primarily? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I see. So they have been overpaying?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is that there was a process back at some point in time when there used to be meters on these. They began to remove meters. They didn't put meters on. Bottom line is we just flat undercounted the number of customers. I think we had a number of 300. And so when we did the math, you divided costs over 300 instead of the more appropriate 1,100. That right alone changed the dynamic. But there was other things to it. The structure itself was off as well. In fact, you're going to see these rates probably go back close to where they were, even before the 011.
Before this,
For
the
the-
2012,
Yeah.
which were probably much closer to these new projected rates, right? Because the current rates are ridiculous.
Yes,
For
they're
the,
much closer than.
yeah, it's like, for the 8-inch, it's like 5 times.
So, and then we'll have to debate a little bit and see what council direction is on how this money goes back. Council has expressed a desire to
I'd
see that the money
imagine.
gets back, and then how that is it a refund, is it a credit, and
Right.
those type of things.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Jim? I just have some questions about the tier structure. I know we went through a multi-tier structure during the last rate adjustments. So you recommend that we go from 5 to 4 tier structure for single family and from a 3 to a 2 tier structure for multifamily.
Right.
But my understanding is that the purpose why we increased the tier structure was to help with conservation, so that the people who use the most water pays the most. So why are we going down, even though you mentioned that was to simplify things, but I assume the higher structure would be more advantageous to help people conserve. So why would you recommend to go down to a lower tier?
Well, we're still recommending the inclining tiers. It's just the number of tiers. And we found that having more tiers doesn't necessarily provide more of a message. The message is, hey, I got into the highest tier, or, I'm in the upper 2 tiers. It's not that out of 7 tiers, I got into the 5th one. Having 4 tiers really provided a good amount of water for residential customers. Basically, the first tier is what a family needs for interior use only. And then the second tier would be a large family for interior use. And then the third tier would give additional water for outdoor watering for a typical lot. And then the fourth tier is anything above that. Now, we haven't gone to real steep tiers or anything like that. It's, increasing from like $2 and something to $3 something for the top tier. But it provides a good, tier notification where, if you're in tier 4, you probably should look at ways of conserving.
What about the multifamily? What's your thinking on having 2 tiers only?
Multifamily, it's hard to get the message through to the user because typically the bill goes to the landlord. We did want to have tiers, and so the first tier is what a typical apartment, I think it's 2.3 persons per unit in Glendale, what they need for interior water use. And then above that, it goes into tier 2. So most apartment buildings will be in tier 1, what we saw in the data.
So you're anticipating that since the tenants don't see the water bill, that they may not be conserving or have the incentive to conserve?
It doesn't have the same price impact on the tenants because they don't see the bill as it would on a single-family customer who actually pays the bill. Yeah.
I guess in the future, will we be able to see the different tier structures and the differences? Because I don't see where the multifamily difference between the 1 and 2 tier, how significant is that between those 2 tiers, or from the single family from 1 to 4 tiers? Are they a big jump from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4?
No, it's essentially the prior consultant misjudged the consumption. So there was very little consumption in the upper tiers. And so we just combined the upper 2 tiers in the single family and the multifamily.
The previous tier structure didn't work at all. So that was the other big mistake that was made, is the factoring where the money was, the revenue was coming from the tiers, and that they did not get right either.
Yeah, because I recall when it was presented to this commission back then was that the incentive was the first tier. People actually do save money if they were from the old rates before 2012. If the new rate from the last study was that people do save if they will continue to use less than whatever it was 10 HCF or something. And so when you pass those tiers, that's where we need to pay more. But that was the argument for having a low tier 1 because then anyone can conserve and save money. So
we have essentially the same amount in tier 1 as we did before. We rounded it a little bit. It's 600 cubic foot per month, and it used to be 6.26. So we rounded it for simplicity. And so the tiers, the lower tiers are pretty much the same as they were under the current structure. We just have consolidated the upper tiers.
What about the percentage increase over a year? Because I think the last time it was presented 3 years ago or so, that there was a certain increase, and the council approved it based on those percentage increases for 5 years.
Right.
Would this be similar, or is going to be a major adjustment to those percentages?
Yeah, I think there was a 5% increase for 2015, January 1st, and that would move to September of 2014. And then there will be several more years of increases. We're proposing 5, 5, 4, 4, 4, so a 5-year program to get the utility into a positive cash balance.
What if you don't get that approval? Because I recall the council was pretty much with almost deadlock on even an increase more than 2 or 3%. So if you're asking for 5 or 4.
We obviously have several options to propose to council. Council could ultimately say nothing. We're not going to do anything, and then that will make us react, and we'll either have to reduce our costs dramatically, or a combination of maybe where there is some revenue increase with cost reduction. But as you can see, because we were the premise of the structure that was presented fell woefully short what we needed to get the water utility back on its feet, out of its deficit position, into positive cash, and to start to rebuild the reserves, and we didn't get there, fortunately.
Is there a scenario where we can increase to 2 or 3%?
We can, Mr. Yeah, we can run any scenario that we need to, and show how those effects under the rate structure will do over any period of time. So she said, yeah, if you wanted to do 2s, here's where you would be. If you wanted to do 3 years of 5s instead of 5 years of 5s, or 3 years of 4 instead of 5 years of 4, or whatever that combination is, we can run those and then show where the water utility would be in regards to reserves, in regards to operating cash, in regards to deficit balances.
Right. And if council is willing to take a hit on the reserve, then of course it's their prerogative to have a lower rate increase.
But we don't have any reserves. We're in the hole. So, I mean, our objective at least would be try to reduce that negative deficit balance. But the council has a lot of options before them, as I said. So we'll have to. That's where we're just kicking that process off, where we'll go through that, first getting the public's input, setting the hearing date, obviously, and then getting the public's input, and then coming back through to the legislative bodies, the commission, and then the council. Seeing what the recommendations and ultimate decision is.
So far, what we've seen today is the base scenario that you're going to be presenting to the public.
Yeah, this is the base scenario. So you saw that already has an impact. That doesn't include any rate increases, but you already saw the tiers were so, or the different classes were so out of whack in some cases that they're already going to experience an increase. But what that means ultimately is they haven't been paying what we had projected they should have been paying when we did the rate increase in 2012. In fact, we've run scenarios where there's actually, believe it or not, certain categories of people that are paying less after 2 rate increases than they were prior to the 2012 using the same amount of water. That's kind of how out of whack we got. So.
I want to suggest something that we've kind of been doing regularly. Every time we do a rate increase proposal, or as a matter of fact, when you came in, being a general manager, I remember, we went over, or you and staff came up with a list of cost-cutting initiatives. Mm-hmm. I know as we roll this out, people are going to ask us, what are you doing, the company, to cut cost? Maybe right off, your head right now, you may not be able to think of them. Can you come back to the commission and let us know what are the areas that you're working on to reduce costs? Because the council and the public and everybody's going to ask, and the commission here want to know also.
Well, I mean, Ms. Chan, essentially, we've talked about some of these things. We've reduced our staffing levels from where we were 3 years ago, 2 years ago when I came. We're over 100 people less than we were. We drastically cut back our capital programs. We were lucky to get the bond issuance in that allows us to restart some of those. But going forward, depending on what decision is made with regards to the revenue, we may have to cut more and cut deep. And I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Your single highest cost is staff and benefits. It's just not something that we care to do, but given the options at the time, we'll have to consider everything. So
Right, exactly. So I'm recommending that maybe we start thinking and start considering coming up with a list.
I haven't stopped thinking since I got here. So there's always, you always have to be prepared, and we are. But at the end of the day, too, we want to run a solid water company.
Right.
So there is some sort of a place where you kind of hit.
Right. And I think, everyone will agree with that and would agree to go forward with the rate proposal if we all can see that we have achieved,
Yes.
and made the effort,
Yes.
and achieved some cut that will make the process go a lot smoother.
Yes.
And if I may add, the Prop 218 notice that's going to be distributed describes some of those cost-cutting measures, which are, as Mr. Zern described.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you.
Maybe you can also comment on this, Mr. Zone, on the transfer. We don't have a transfer anymore, and some of the people in the public might say, since we don't have a transfer anymore, why don't you guys save that money and not raise rates? So what's your answer to that?
Well, the transfer is no longer being implemented on the water side. To the extent it's not cost-based, the only way that any money could be transferred is if there's some cost justification for it. So I don't see that as an issue that is relevant
You might
to the
think
water
that
rates.
since there's no more transfer, that the utility is saving that money on the water side.
It's
So-
built into our pro forma, so you can look at it. It's in there. We haven't done it, and it has not. It's made a difference in some cases, but it hasn't fixed the problem. So when we show you, we come out and show pro forma numbers and projected balances and operating costs, that will all. There's no transfer included in there. That transfer's been removed, so that money's staying, and then you'll see clearly that we still have financial challenges.
Yeah, I can still see the members of the public might question that, because when the last rates were implemented, the transfer was still there, and it only happened after the rate increase. So they might assume that, what do you guys do with the money, since...
It's there.
Yeah, the transfer was discontinued. The discussion took place at council in February of 2011, and the rates were last increased in 2012. So I don't see that there being a transfer issue with this rate.
But we'll roll the numbers out, and you can see it very clearly there. It's there.
Yeah, I think
it's not coming out, so and it hasn't had the kind of impact that people may think it had.
Right.
Keep in mind, we had a pretty steep deficit we were dealing with in the water department when we started this whole thing.
Some questions to prepare for your outreach efforts.
Oh, yes.
So the last thing I want to suggest also is to have this commission come back like last time as recommendations to the council on what is the right structure, whether that be 555, 444, 333, or a combination of increases. So is there a way staff can come back with a scenario with plan A, B, or C, where we can identify what is the best effort as a recommendation from this commission to council to tackle or to approve?
That's what we plan to do. So that when you look on here, I think we've got it listed as, or if we haven't, we'll have to add it back on, but it would be the rate meeting, the rate discussion meeting.
Are you talking about general forecast?
Yes. So we have to come back.
Not here.
Ms. Martirosian, do you have a estimated date of coming back to commission? So it's probably the July meeting. We'll come back to you. So obviously, we're going to have to move some of those things around for that date so that you have enough time to talk about it. But that would be when we'd have the more detailed conversation about proposed revenue structures as opposed to rate structures. We have separated those. and I'm still getting used to that. So we've talked today about the rate structure itself, and then we'll talk to you also about revenue structure, which would include potential for additional increases to the rates. And we'll give you those scenarios and allow you the opportunity to make a recommendation to council on which scenario you feel is best for the utility. We will put that into our report to council, which will be more towards the third meeting of July. The public hearing is the 22nd. Public hearing is the 22nd with council, so we would have your comments in.
Is there a way we can have at least preliminary scenarios of different structures by the next June meeting of this
Probably
commission?
not, because we'll still be going out to the public. So that's also going to be instrumental in the structures that we end up coming back with as we pose those and talk about what public comment we've had back. We may be able to have, who knows, to be honest with you, when we go to present to council the information to set the hearing, they may give us more definitive direction on different options. It's possible they could. They certainly have the right to do that. So, I mean, technically the meeting is to set the Proposition 218 required hearing, 45-day notice and hearing. But I'm going to assume that they're going to have some level of discussion on which options they're okay with reviewing and maybe eliminating certain other options. So when we come back for the June meeting, we might even have some information in regards to what direction they gave us.
And that's before going to the public.
That'll be in the middle of going to the public.
Going to the public.
Yeah.
Well, I have a request. Last time when this happened, the commission here never saw the presentation that was given in the different areas. And I understand we're all invited and all of us try to make it at one or the other. This time, before you actually do your first presentation, can you forward us your presentation so we know more or less what's going to be discussed?
To the public, you mean?
To the public, yes. Because I think you used the same presentation to everyone, right, in these public meetings?
Yeah, I think we had PowerPoint presentations.
Right.
We had different structures of the meeting, and then it was Q&A mostly. And
Right.
We took notes, and then when we came back to you to give you the report and get your recommendation on the rate structure, revenue structure, we talked about some of the things, the highlights of those meetings. But yeah, we can send you the...
Yeah, that'd be great.
And we also, as we have in the past, at least for the first electric outreach we did that ended up that we did not take action that particular year, came back the next year, we filmed the first public outreach meeting. And we run that on GTV6. So we can also give you a link to that if you want to see actually how a live presentation of that in addition to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
But I think just to maybe preempt Ms. Godinez's concern could be that only 2 or less people, so we don't have a quorum at these public meetings, right? But if there's 3 or more of us are there, it could be seen as a public meeting.
Well, I think you can attend a presentation as members of the public. I can confirm that for you, but I think it should be okay in this context. It's a public meeting. So.
Right. But I think it's best if only 2 of the members here attend any public meeting just
There's
to
certainly going to
avoid-
be a lot of meetings that you can choose from. So.
Yeah, there's no issue.
Okay, any other
We'll
questions?
send you a list of those meetings with the dates and locations.
And the meeting you're talking about in July, is that going to be a special meeting, or is that the July 7th?
No, we'd like to be able to do it at the regular July 7th meeting. We'll just have to change some of these things. We obviously have elections of the officers, president and secretary will have to do, but that shouldn't take a long time. And then we can dedicate most of the rest of it to the rates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are our normal, regular updates,
Right.
and we can get those covered.
Okay, sure. Sounds good.
Yes, no, that's great.
No.
So, any more questions? No more? All right, let's move on to the next item.
6, oral communications.
We don't have any cards here, so let's close that and move on to the next item.
7, agenda forecast.
So for the agenda, did you mention, Mr. Zone, that you might be able to come back with another water revenue structure for June meeting as well?
No, not at the June meeting. Unless depending on what council direction we may get next Tuesday. So if it's something more definitive, I can report that out to you. But the June meeting was really going to have, most of our effort was to talk about both the legislative update and then the budget, which will include the KPIs as well.
So I noticed that there's a water conservation update. Is that?
We put it on every month, Mr. Yao, and if you don't want it,
Sorry.
I mean...
No, I requested that. Sorry, I remember now. I requested
I mean, we could do that. In some cases, it's as easy as an email. Really, at this point in time, it was Ms. Hartunian having gone to the MWD meeting, it was important to get back to you. But if it remains status quo with regards to what the declarations are, probably won't have a whole lot of action. So, I mean, we can give you an email or we can send you a written update with the package on that. And the customer service update, again, you're familiar with that. That's a regular update. We can give it to you if you want. I don't know that the budget's going to take a considerable amount of time to present, but you may have more questions on it that we can help explain. We'll give you both our operating budget and our capital budget for all of our operations.
No, let's continue to leave the water conservation update on every month, because my thinking back then was to have that front of mind for us, at least for the public, to see that we're always talking about water conservation until we pass this drought.
That's fine. That's fine. And the legislative update we should keep too, because it's been a little bit of time and we may have some updates for you. And then we'll get into the budget and we'll roll the KPIs into the budget too, so that's really kind of a single item.
Can you add water conservation update dash water rates update so that we can at least have a chance to talk about it? Because I know that Ms. Godinez doesn't like us to talk about things that are not on agenda. So at least if we have it on agenda, we can have a short discussion.
What I was waiting to do is to see if we had anything definitive that was different than what we talked about today, and then I'll add that.
Well, if not, we can just say, okay, you went to discuss with the council, just a verbal. It doesn't have to be a full report. It's just something that so we can have an option to discuss.
I'll add that to the agenda. It doesn't necessarily have to be on here. I mean, but yeah, I'll add it to the agenda. I mean, this update is not an official document.
Yeah.
No, the minutes will reflect that it's your desire to have an update if there is one in June. So if there is, then we'll put that on the agenda.
Oh, no, I was talking about putting on the agenda for sure so that we can have an option to discuss it in the June meeting, right? So
what would we be discussing?
Just any updates about the rate structure, your discussion with City Council about potential options on the rates, anything like that. So other commissioners might want to talk about what happened during this meeting, the two that are not here today. So potentially they could come up with suggestions or recommendations. So that at least if it's on the agenda, then we have the option to discuss it. But if it's not on the agenda...
But that's the July...
June, just the June one.
No, but that's what the July meeting's for, is to have the in-depth discussion.
But we might get additional input from the other two commissioners who might have some suggestions for the July meeting. So since they're not here today, they don't have the option to discuss anything that they might want to talk about.
I think where, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think where Mr. Zern is going with this is that he wants to be able to have had the input from the community before presenting to you how those went, but wants to give you an update. But if we have two meetings where you're giving recommendations, that's certainly one option. But
No, I just want to have a chance for the other commissioners to weigh in as well in the next meeting where they didn't have the opportunity to for this meeting, so that June, at least once we have it on the agenda, then we have that option to discuss it. So
it would be a repeat of this discussion next month for the benefit of the other commissioners?
Not a full repeat, just saying that we talked about the additional drought rate, maybe the change in the rate structure, and so that it will be a short discussion.
I think what they're saying is there will be no change in next month's meeting.
And that's fine too, but at least the commissioners might watch this and they say that it's something that they might have an issue with for certain aspects of this proposal.
But that's all we can. I mean, that's what the July meeting was about. I don't mind. I mean, if we do it every month, I don't know that that's a good use of our time. But I think we knew what was on the agenda. At the July meeting, it's going to be the real deal. That's where we come back and show you everything, and you make your recommendation that we'll take to council, actually.
Right, and I think July might be a little bit too far in the game. At least at June, we have another option, another session to discuss it, even briefly, just to maybe weigh in on some issues that we might be thinking about after this meeting, or for the new other commissioners to weigh in as well.
But where would that, okay.
Just
So I guess
None of that goes to
one
council,
option-
so.
Yeah, it's fine.
One option might be to put it on as a report where staff could update you on the fact that you went to council and that you're engaging in community meetings.
Right.
And then if any
Okay.
commissioner wanted to say, what they thought about that or provide suggestions, then that could be taken under consideration. And then the next month, we'd come back and put it as an action item for you to take, official recommendation to council.
Perfect. No, that's all I wanted. It's just that
Okay.
additional opportunity to discuss it. Because I think if we go too far down, then to the July meeting where we actually take action, it might be a little late to weigh in all the options that the other commissioners might want to convey. Because initially we had an option on the agenda for new or old business, and I think the discussion back then was that we can't really discuss old business if it's not agendized. And so that just limits our opportunity to discuss items from previous meetings. So if we have it officially on the agenda, then at least we have that option to discuss it. Fair enough?
Fair enough?
Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, so that's the only addition to the June agenda. It's just a dash or a slash on water conservation update.
No, we'll put it as a separate item.
Oh, separate item? Okay.
Yes. I'll work with Ms. Cadenas and we'll figure out the wording.
Okay, that'll be good. All right, any additions or changes? No? Okay, sounds good. Last item, please.
8, adjournment.
There's a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I second.
Great, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.